Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we discuss everything in Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
My name is Ben, and Jeremiah, it is finally time.
It's finally time.
It's spring training time.
It's spring training time. Pitchers and catchers reported.
Well, really even more. Everyone who has a chance or wants to report are there already. We even have position players there getting some early reps, so it's a good time to be alive.
Including your boy Tim Tebow.
Oh, don't even get me started.
I'm kidding. We'll
talk about him in spring training.
We will.
I guarantee we will.
We will talk about him. But today is a very special show because we're literally over a little bit, like 2.5 months. No, a month and a half away from the season. So, and we got about 6 weeks left. So, in those weeks, we're going to discuss each division, and we're going to preview those divisions. And today we're going to start with the National League Central because, the World Series champion, the Chicago Cubs, are in that division. And in case you don't know, the Cardinals, we're going to talk about the Pirates that are also in that division, and we're also going to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers and the Cincinnati Reds. But, we have to start off with the World Series champion, Chicago Cubs. They look like the World Series favorites again, Ben, and why not? They still have mostly the same group core guys there. They have pretty much the same pitchers there. They might have to kind of adjust their bullpen a little bit, but either they got Carlos Schwarber back being healthy, so they look like they're reloaded, they're ready to go to make another World Series run, and I don't think they're slowing down anytime soon. And most of their best players are still young. They're in their mid-20s.
Exactly. Last year, the Cubs, we all know what they did last year. They had the best record in baseball. And, it looks like this year they could be experimenting with a few things. So one of the early storylines from spring training is right now, Kyle Schwarber is actually behind the plate. He's actually taking some reps at catcher. They still imply on making him a left fielder, which he was before he was injured. And then last year in the World Series, he was just a DH. But it looks like he's still trying to rehab and recover a little bit from that ACL injury he suffered at the early part of last year. So right now he's behind the plate taking some reps at catcher in spring training just to get him up to speed, get him some at-bats, get him playing. Kind of like last year in the World Series where he was a DH, but obviously in the National League you can't have a DH. So they're trying to just get him up to speed, get him some reps, but they want to make him a left fielder still. So kind of interesting there. Could be something they explore if there's some injuries, if he really succeeds there, possibly moving on, because they had David Ross last year who's officially retired. And then so there's some young guys they have to call up, or they could go with Schwarber.
Yeah, and it looks like they also got Wilson Contreras, who they also called up last year to take over the catcher position full-time. So the projected lineup, according to RotoCamp, is like this. It goes like this: Ben Zobrist, Kyle Schwarber, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Wilson Contreras, Addison Russell, Jason Hayward, and Javier Baez. Like, this looks...
With his blonde hair, too, Javier Baez.
Yeah, so this is a team that's still scary. I look like they're probably going to be the best team again. And when you look at the rotation, they still got John Lester, Jake Arrieta, Kyle Hendricks, John Lackey, and for the fifth spot, it looks like they're going to have a little competition there between Mike Montgomery and Brett Anderson, which are pretty solid pieces to have as your fifth starter there. And as for their bullpen, they might have to make a little bit of adjustments there. They do, and yeah, this is a really good team. That's all I can say. Real good team. And I think the bullpen may have a little bit more work to do. But this looks like the same type of team.
For me, the only thing that would slow down Chicago would be injuries. That's the one thing that slows down every team. Because as you mentioned, they are really young, and they have what it takes to succeed in the playoffs. They have that pitching. Like you mentioned, even as a fifth starter, maybe someone like Mike Montgomery could still be really, really good. Obviously not going to have Jason Hamill this year, which they had last year in that role, in that position. So they are still a dominant team. You mentioned the bullpen. That's going to be the one thing you have to work on, because you're not going to have a Aroldis Chapman in the ninth inning anymore. You're not going to have a shutdown automatic closer, although the Wade Davis and everything, but they're not going to have Chapman, who is by far the best closer in the game, because he went back to the Yankees. So you're going to have a little bit of adjustments there, but I have faith and belief in Theo Epstein. You're going to have a new center fielder with Dexter Fowler gone, but Theo Epstein's proven himself in Boston and now in Chicago. I got to have a lot of faith in them, and they have to be the World Series favorite.
Yeah, and speaking of the bullpen, I blinked out on some of the guys that they had in their bullpen, but they don't have Aroldis Chapman, who you said. They still got Pedro Stop, Hector Rodon, Justin Grimm. They did get Wade Davis, Koji Harara, and Brian Dunsing, and Wade Davis looks like he could be the closer there, who did pretty good for the Kansas City Royals. So they might use a closer by committee, but Wade Davis can be the guy there again. But he kind of struggled a little bit in Kansas City. But yeah, I do think it'd be like the same thing last year, where the bullpen was kind of like the main concern. But I feel like they will address it at the trade deadline. We'll see how that goes. But I think we can agree that the Cubs are probably going to win this division again, and their main competition being St. Louis Cardinals.
Definitely. St. Louis, last year, they had a pretty good season, although they missed the playoffs. They were 86 and 76, so kind of down in regards to the Cardinals' standards and kind of the success they've had consistently over the last, really, decade, I would say. It seems like no matter what, the Cardinals are always there at the end of the season. And, they had some injuries they had to battle through. They're going to have some new faces here, one of them being Dexter Fowler, going from Chicago to St. Louis. So he's a big part there. But you still have Matt Carpenter, who's one of the best infielders in the game, a great hitter as well, good defensive player. Yadier Molina, who's arguably the best defensive catcher in the game, he and Buster Posey. And honestly, you just got to have a lot of faith in St. Louis. They're such a well-run organization.
Yeah, in St. Louis, they actually won't have one of their top prospects this year, Alex Reyes, who's going to go season-ending elbow injury, aka
had some Tommy John surgery today.
Yeah, Tommy John surgery. So he was one of the top prospects. He looks like he was about to compete for a rotation spot. It looks like he was about to get a spot there. He was throwing in preparation for the World Baseball Classic and alerted trainers. So, St. Louis will miss him this year, and he looks like he still could be part of their future. But with the Cardinals, they always they know how to find pitchers. They'll be fine with them. But the Cardinals do have pitching depth. They always find ways to get guys there. But speaking of their lineup, you dropped some names like Matt Carpenter, Dexter Fowler. So Dexter Fowler looks like he's about to be their leadoff guy, and the projected lineup according to Royal Camp is Dexter Fowler. You got Desmond Diaz, who had a breakout year. He kind of flew under the radar last season. Matt Carpenter at 3. You got Steven Piscotty, who came on his own early in the year, kind of slowed down, but ended up bouncing back. Yadier Molina, who's probably one of the most consistent catchers in the game. Even though his bat kind of has slowed down, he's not the same type of hitter. He's still a very great catcher. And Johnny Peralta, who looks like he's about to man third base. Randall Grichuk looks like he's about to be in the outfield. And Colton Wong looks like he's about to be the second baseman and will hit 8th. And that's for the pitching rotation. It still looks strong. You got Carlos Martinez, Mike Lee, Adam Wainwright, Michael Wacha, Lance Lynn, Luke Weaver, who could add some depth there. He had a couple of starts last year. Marco Gonzalez, he had a couple of starts last year as well. Alex Reyes, he looks like he was about to be a guy in the rotation, but he went under Tommy John surgery. So it looks like the Cardinals are going to be all right, but I don't know if they're going to win as many games as the Cubs. That is hard. this is a team that they missed the playoffs last year. They missed the playoffs.
How about this? Before we take the break, and then we'll preview the rest of the teams in the Central. Do you think the Cubs get 100 wins again?
100 wins is a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do ever. And I don't think they. I think they have a shot of doing it, but it's hard to win 100 games. It's hard to even make the playoffs in baseball. It's hard to win your division.
I'm going to say no. That's like you mentioned. It's hard.
It's hard to do. I'm not gonna. I don't want to say, oh, they're gonna have the record for most. No, I still think they're one of the top teams, but if they have 100 wins again, there's no doubt in my mind they're going to be World Series champs. I still think they're going to be World Series champs anyways. This is my World Series team. But I say they go around 95 wins. They get close to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last year they were pretty healthy with the exception of Schwarber.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to replicate that again. You had Rizzo and Bryant who were MVP caliber players, and of course Bryant winning it.
They can do it again.
And then you had Lester as well as Arrieta, as well as all the other pitching rotation they have healthy last year.
Yeah, Kyle Hendricks.
Is it going to happen again? I don't think so.
And you had Kyle Hendricks, who emerged as a Cy Young candidate. He was absolutely dominant. So it's hard to replicate that kind of success. And don't get me wrong, this team is still good. They're probably the best team in baseball. But it's hard to get 100 wins in this league. It's so hard. Like, I don't remember the last time a team had back-to-back 100-win seasons. I don't remember that on top of my head.
I'm going to have to look that up. We'll talk about it after the break. I'll look that up during the break.
All right, but so the Cardinals, they missed the playoffs this year. Do you think they'll be back?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think the National League is so competitive. I think the Mets will be a lot better this year. The Dodgers are really good. The Giants are good. The Nationals are still there.
And they got the Colorado Rockies, who I think is a potential wild card team. I think so. And then you got the Miami Marlins, who could get a little bit better there. But I think the sneaky team in this division is the Pirates. And we're going to talk about the Pirates, Ben, when we get back. So hold on, guys. We're going to discuss the rest of the National League Central teams when we get back to the Going to Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So we are back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. Thank you for listening. So, Jeremiah, during the break, I looked up the last teams to have back-to-back 100-win seasons. So before I tell you prediction, go ahead.
Okay, my last. So the last team to do it.
I'll give you two of them.
Okay.
So who do you think it was?
Okay, can you give? Okay.
I'll give you years.
Can you give me the time period?
I'll give you years.
A little easier, yeah.
So the last team to do it was 2004, 2005.
Was it? It wasn't the Phillies. Wasn't the early Mariners teams in the early 2000s?
Nope.
Man. Was it?
Okay, National League.
Was it National League?
Team we've been talking about.
What division are they in?
The team we were previewing division right now.
So
can't get any more.
It was the Cardinals.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Cardinals in 2004 had 105 wins. 2005, 100 wins exactly. But Jeremiah, the New York Yankees from 2002 to 2004 had 3 consecutive years of 100 wins. In 2002, the Yankees had 103. In 2003, they had 101. And in 2004, they had 101 as well.
Wow. And
but an interesting stat as well, over the last 20 years, only 3 teams that have had 100 wins have won the World Series. That includes the Cubs from last year.
Okay.
So the Cubs from last year, the Yankees from 2009, and the Yankees from 98.
Okay, cool. Those are some really good Cardinals teams, too.
Oh, yes, exactly.
There was some real good Cardinals teams.
Pujols on there.
Pujols is in his prime.
You had Chris Carpenter with the rotation, and man.
Yeah, those are some really good Cardinals teams. Those are really fun teams to watch. But, man, thank you for that little stat of the day there.
Of course.
All right. Well, we're here discussing the National League Central Division in our division preview show. We're starting division previews, guys. So we talked about the Cubs. We talked about the Cardinals. So we're going to talk about the final 3 teams here. And we got to talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pittsburgh Pirates, they look like they have Andrew McCutchen on the trading block there this entire offseason. It looks like there was some talks of him going to the Nationals, the Blue Jays. He's still a Pirate. He's still with Pittsburgh. So right now, this team, they were very inconsistent some parts of the year. They finished 3rd place. They missed the playoffs again. They only won 78 games.
Yeah, 73 and 83. Yeah,
so they haven't. I think they missed the playoffs for like 2-3 straight years now. When you look at this team, we got to talk about the strength. It is definitely their pitching. Their top pitcher, Garrett Cole, did get hurt at the end of the year. He looks like he wants to be more productive. Then they got 2 guys that they brought up last season who look like that are going to be a huge part of their pitching rotation. They've seen that Jameson Taillon, Tyler Glasnow. These were 2 of the top prospects last year, and they look like they're about to be either 2 or 3. Taillon looked like he looked like he has potential to be a number 2 guy. Glasnow looks like he had potential to be an ace, but he looks like he might be kind of being more taking a little more time to develop than Taillon is. Then you got Ivan Nova, who pitched really good last year after being traded there.
Yeah, we've seen him in the past with the Yankees. He's had some success, so if he can stay healthy, he could be a nice end of the rotation starter.
And then they got Juan Nicasio, who started the season 2016 very good, but got demoted to the bullpen. So when we look at this projected lineup here of the Pittsburgh Pirates, we got Josh Harrison, who's been their leadoff hitter for about 2-3 years now. Josh Bell, one of their top prospects at first base, looks like he's about to be promoted there. He's projected to be there. Andrew McCutchen, of course, still there. Starting Marte, looking to hit cleanup. They got Greg Polanco, who had a great season last year. David Freese at third base. Francisco Cervelli, if he can stay healthy, he can be a huge part of this team. And you got Jordan.
Really? You think so?
If he stays healthy.
I don't think so.
That's it. That's a big if, man.
No, I don't think he can be a key contributor to the team.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not telling. I know he doesn't have the offensive numbers.
Exactly my point.
But I know he doesn't have the offensive numbers. But I feel like if he can stay healthy, he can be a very important player on the field.
He could be a good leader behind the plate. I'll give you that.
So he can be a really good leader in this team. And Jordy Mercer as shortstop rounds out the 8th spot in this lineup. So, this team is all over the place. Nick, this is they're probably one of the hardest teams to predict. They have a lot of talent. I think they have talent, especially in the outfield, but I don't think Andrew McCutchen is going to be with the Pirates at the end of the year. I truly don't think so. I don't think so one bit.
There's just too many question marks with the Pirates to me. I mean, you have McCutchen, who you talked about. Is he going to get traded? Is he not going to get traded? They haven't really come out and said anything, so that's still up for grabs. So, of course, he's going to be playing this year with that in mind. His future is still unsettled. You had a lot of injuries in the pitching staff last year and a lot of young guys who you're honestly relying on this year, and one of them being Glasnow. So you're really expecting these young guys to really perform, and you're putting a lot of pressure on them. So can they handle that or not? And there's just too many question marks for me with Pittsburgh, and they're in arguably one of the toughest divisions in the game with the best team in baseball and a team in the Cardinals who have been really, really good for so many years.
Yeah, and Pirates pitchers, the starters, they racked up the 3rd fewest innings in the National League, and they ranked 11th with 4.67 ERA. They actually missed the postseason, in which I did. It's actually the first time since 2012, so they were in the postseason the other 2 times before that. But Garrett Cole, who is the ace of this team, he won the Save List 3 times, and in the season on the 60-day DL. Remember, this is a guy that won 19 games 2 years ago. He started out very slow. So I do think Garrett Cole is going to have a bounce back year. I do think so about that, and I'm expecting very good things from Jason Tylon and Tyler Glass now. But when I look at this team, there's just all over the place. There's, like you said, man, there's too many question marks, and they're in the toughest divisions. There's 2 teams that are better than them, and those 2 teams are probably going to make the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, they're also in the National League. And the National League is stacked. We can probably have 3 teams in the National League. We have 3 teams in the East. We can probably have, I don't know, we could probably have 3 teams in Central, but I just don't think the Pirates are as good as other teams in the National League, like the Giants, the Dodgers. You got the Nationals, the Mets. So I don't think they're as good as these other teams that could potentially make the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you, buddy. I'm not too sold on them. There's too many question marks for me.
All right, well, moving on to one of the final 2 teams here is the Milwaukee Brewers. They struggles continue for this team. There's trade talks, about trading Ryan Braun. They finished with 73 wins, 89 losses. They were pretty bad. We'll just say that. And I'm not expecting too much from this team again this year. I do think this is the year where Ryan Braun finally gets traded. He's been in trade talks for like 3 years now. I think this is the year he finally does.
You think so? Okay,
think so.
So where do you think is an ideal landing spot for Brawny?
There's a variety of teams, especially in the National League West. I can definitely, there's been some talks of him going to the Giants and possibly the Dodgers, maybe the Nationals. Probably the Mets. I think if the Rockies can end up being a contender, which I think they could very well be one, I can see Ryan Braun going to the Rockies. Can you imagine Ryan Braun playing in Colorado? Like at
Coors Field, he might hit 1,000,000 home runs.
He'll probably break Barry Bonds' record. but all jokes aside, though, when this team, they look like they have the potential to be good, but I just feel like they just can't get over the hump, and they're just always mediocre. When I look at their lineup and Jonathan Villar, who had a really good breakout year in Milwaukee, he had 50 stolen bases, was one of their top guys in the lineup. He is the one that sets the tone. When you got Scrooge Jeanette, who was very inconsistent, you got Ryan Braun, you got Eric Dames, Domingo Santana, who they got in the trade and from Houston 2 years ago. And they got Keon Broxton, who one of their top outfield prospects. Orlando Arcia, the shortstop, looks like he's about to be a big leader this year. He looks like he was one of their top prospects in the league. You got Jet Brandy being their catcher. So there's really not a whole lot to get excited about this team. They don't have a lot of big-time, players outside of Ryan Braun. And, Orlando Arcia could be that guy, but, he's a prospect. Can't really expect too much from him. But when I look at the rotation is probably the weak link of this team.
Exactly. I mean, Matt Garza is projected to be their opening day starter, and he's not playing for Tampa Bay anymore. No. I mean, it's been a long time since Matt Garza has had a whole lot of success in baseball, so that really says it all for me.
Yeah, but there is 2 guys I do like in this rotation. I do like Junior Guerrera. He was really good in times until he was on the disabled list. I do like Jimmy Nelson, but who knows? Maybe he looks like he's on the verge of losing a starting spot. I did like Zach Davies at times, but this whole rotation is just, I think it's one of the worst in Major League Baseball. It's just bad. I do think this is the year Ryan Braun gets traded. This is a team that really needs to start building their farm system. I do think it starts with Orlando Arcia. I think this is the year they finally start building this team the right way.
So they get rid of some stars and get younger.
Yeah, I do think this is the year. I can see Jonathan Villar being a mainstay in this team. He looks like he is a pretty good home setter. But yeah, there's really not a whole lot to get excited about this team, Ben. It's just there's really a whole lot. I do expect them to finish in last place, maybe second to last place. But yeah, there's really they're in a tough division, so I don't see this team being very competitive heading this year.
I agree, and then we can say some similar things about the last team in the NL Central, and that's the Cincinnati Reds. Last year finishing 68 and 94. this year, things not looking too well for the Reds. They made a trade just this past week where they traded longtime second baseman Brandon Phillips. They traded him to Atlanta, so they're going to have a new second baseman there. But you can say a lot of the same things you did about Milwaukee, about Cincinnati here.
Yeah.
I mean, they have Joey Votto, which is great, but other than that, I mean, not much looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I do think that Phillips trade kind of does leave some competition open for the second base spot there. But when you look at the lineup, Bill Hamilton, who has been one of the best base runners and base stealers of the game ever since he entered the league, he had 60. I do expect him to be that same guy. Zach Kolstart, the shortstop, he had a pretty solid year, hitting 15 home runs. Joey Votto, he's still there, still probably one of the best hitters. You got Adam Duvall, who broke out with 33 home runs last year. But as far as the rest of the guys on the team, Scott Schwarber, who's projected to be one of their outfielders, Eugenio Suarez, I'm not sure if I said that name right. He is the third baseman.
Yeah, Eugenio Suarez.
Eugenio. I don't know why I said that. Eugenio Suarez, he had 19 home runs. He had a pretty hot start in 2016. You got Devin Morocco. I don't know. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't say his name.
Mesoraco.
I can't believe I couldn't say it. I don't know why.
It's okay, buddy. It's all right.
Devin Mesoraco. If he stays healthy this year, I think he can be a very good player. That's been the problem with Mesoraco's career is he can't stay in the field, but he can hit the bat. He can hit with the bat. And you got Jose Peraza, who's projected to be their second baseman, but he is in the competition there. But outside of Joey Votto, there's really not a whole lot. Outside Joey Votto and Duvall, there's really not a whole lot of guys that can really put some runs on the board. And maybe most of these guys, their home run numbers are kind of skewed a little bit because of the ballpark they play at. But I do think Mesoraco, I think if he stays healthy, I think he could be an all-star. I do think he has that kind of potential. But as their lineup, their rotation, I do like Anthony DeSclafani. I do like him. I do think he's someone that they look as part of their future. I do like him a lot. Brandon Finnegan, remember, this is the guy that started out with the Kansas City Royals. He was the one player that played in the College World Series, then played in the actual World Series the same year. So he was one of those guys, but he struggled at times as a starter, I think, for the first time ever in his career. Robert Stevenson, who looked like he was who is one of the top pitching prospects, entered the big leagues last year. He struggled. And you got Scott Fieldman, who struggled again. They have Homer Bailey on the disabled list again. He just can't stay on the field. I do think we're kind of seeing Homer Bailey at the end of his career there. But, yeah, there's really not a whole lot of talent in this team. I think I can't tell if there's less talent in this team or Milwaukee. I'm going to probably say there's more talent in Milwaukee because, they do have Ryan Braun and some guys, but I can't really tell a whole lot. I do think this rotation is maybe a little just as worse as Milwaukee, but yeah, I don't see Milwaukee or Cincinnati competing this year in this division, at least not yet. I do think the Reds have potential to be exciting because of the ballpark they play, and they got guys that can hit the ball at the field. But I don't think they'll win a lot of games, but I do think they can be an exciting team.
They'll probably be in a lot of shootouts.
Yeah.
Because they're going to score runs, but they're going to give up a lot too.
Yeah, so we do agree that we have the Cubs finishing first. We have the Cardinals. We got the Pirates, we got the Brewers, and we got the Reds finishing that order.
I'd say the Reds will finish above Milwaukee. So? Yeah. Okay. Last year they were only back by 5 games, but I think they'll finish ahead of Milwaukee.
Yeah, those two teams can go either way, but I do think Pirates are the third best team in this division. But that's not really saying a whole lot, especially with the top 2 teams there. But that concludes the division preview, Ben, and we're gonna take a last break, and we're gonna discuss spring training news. And
yes.
We're gonna do a whole news roundup when we come back to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Well, guys, last week when we were done with the last week's episode, there was some news of a former pitcher trying to attempt a comeback as a knuckleballer. That player is Brian Wilson. Ben, I remember when, being a Giants fan and all, I remember Brian Wilson in the prime of his career being one of the best shutdown closers in the game. He was probably one of the most entertaining players in baseball.
That's for sure.
And in sports as well. So I think the main things he was so entertaining, I think his beard kind of made him in a way, but he was just so wacky at times. I kind of thought he could have had a career in comedy, but I guess he didn't want to go that route. But yeah, he was very wacky, very entertaining. But the thing I do liked about him that he was actually productive when the Giants needed him to be. But then, of course, injuries started to pile up, and he just wasn't the same guy. But it looks like he hasn't been in the league since 2014, and it looks like that he wants to make a comeback as a knuckleballer, Ben. So, do you think a team should take a chance on Brian Wilson?
I mean, I don't know. I think Wilson coming back probably means one of two things. One, he wants to get back in the limelight, or maybe he doesn't have a whole lot of money or something, because he hasn't played in a couple of years, and I give him credit for maybe changing some of his approaches. Obviously, he's not going to come back in the league being the same player he was a few years ago with the Dodgers and then the Giants before that. So he's trying to find a new way to do it. Becoming a knuckleballer, you can really be really far in age. He's going to be 35 in March, but you can be into your 40s throwing knuckleballs. We saw Tim Wakefield do it. R.A. Dickey still doing it. So you can really play a lot longer as knuckleballer because you're not really putting a whole lot of strain on your arm. So if a team wants to maybe give him a workout, see what it's about, I guess I would entertain that. But as far as signing him, I don't know if I would go that route.
Yeah, I do think he's I think he announced it at a real good time, like before spring training. I do think some team will invite him out. I can actually see the Giants actually inviting him to spring training to at least compete for a roster spot, even though at least at a minor league contract to see what they have. I can see that as a possibility because he was so beloved there, and I can the Giants are kind of more of the most friendly organizations in baseball, so I can definitely see that happen. But the one thing I do want to talk about, Ben, he doesn't have the beard anymore.
He did, and he looks like a totally new person. Like if you haven't seen it before, he looks totally different. You wouldn't even be able to pick him out of a food court at the mall without the beard. You know what I mean? He
looks like Brian Wilson, the Beach Boy. And I'm not talking about the actual Brian Wilson in the Beach Boys. I'm talking about he looks like he's from the beach. Like he looks like a totally different person, and with the beard. The beard just brought on a different persona. So,
yeah, he looks totally different.
So I do think if he did all this thing without the beard, I think people would just think he was just weird. Even though he was weird with the beard kind of made it more made it kind of okay. But as far as Brian Wilson, it's tough to come back in baseball when you haven't pitched in 3 years. That's why I think the best thing for him is to probably get a minor league contract, even if any team even wants to do that. But it'd be interesting to see if a team does. I kind of think the Giants will be the team most likely to give him a minor league contract. But, I kind of think they want to see what they have first because, the main thing about the Giants historically this past year was the bullpen. And they can get any help that they want, but honestly, I don't see Brian Wilson being an impact player probably ever again. I think his time has came and went.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So we talked about Wilson's injury issues. Well, another pitcher who is facing an injury right now is the ace of the Baltimore Orioles, a really good team from last year. They were in the playoffs in the wild card game, although they lost to Toronto. Is Chris Tillman. He looks like he's going to be starting the season on the DL after having a platelet-rich plasma injection into his right shoulder in December. He's still trying to recover from it, but it looks like he's not going to be ready for the start of the season come April 7th.
Yeah, so it looks like they have some candidates to start. It looks like Kevin Gausman can be the guy to start. But this really hurts the Orioles rotation. He had a very good bounce back year in 2016 after a horrid 2015 that's pretty much had him become an average pitcher. He had an 11-11 year, but he pitched a lot more worse than that. He had a ERA that almost went to 5. It was 4.99. So, but as far as opening day starter for the Orioles, it looks like Kevin Gausman can be the guy there. He looks like he was part of their future. But, it's really a shame for a guy like Chris Tillman who has such a great year, And when is he slated to come back? Do you know? He looks like it looks like he's eligible to return in April 9th if he suffers no setbacks. So
he'd miss like 1-2 starts at the most.
So if that's with no setbacks, so it looks like there's a chance he can return at the beginning of the year. But still, you got to be cautious. You got to be cautious with your pitchers. Chris Tillman is getting another year older, so.
Exactly. Last year, he played really well. He pitched really well. He had a 16-6 record with a 3.77 ERA in 30 starts. He threw 172 innings. He is turning 29 in April, and he is coming with the shoulder injury. So the arms are the one things that always breaks down with pitchers. And for someone like Tillman, really physical, really big, throws really hard, the shoulder could be something that like nags on and really affects him all year. Could really affect how Baltimore does this season, and maybe even whether or not they make the playoffs like they did last year.
Yeah, and the division that they're in is even a lot more tougher now because you got the Red Sox, you got the Blue Jays. I think the Yankees are going to be even better now. Whether it's that young core, having some experience behind them, I think they can be a potential wild card team, if not better. They can make some moves, which I do think they will. So this really does affect not just the Baltimore Orioles, but the American League East as well. So it looks like Kevin Gausman is slated to be their opening day starter as of right now. But I think that if Chris Tillman comes back fine and there's no setbacks, I think they will be okay. Because they do have a pretty solid line of backing up this rotation as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw what they did last year. It was really a 3-team race in the AL East between Boston, Toronto, and Baltimore. So they're still a solid team, and I think they'll still be there. But you mentioned the division gets more and more competitive. I think the Yankees are going to be better. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and finds out. But before we end the show, Jeremiah, there's still a lot of big-name guys, whether you think they are or not, or still capable. There's still a lot of big-name guys out there on the free agent market that could maybe help some teams if they have an injury come spring training, or maybe they address some issues that they thought they would have resolved by spring training and then obviously don't. So, I mean, there's guys like Matt Wieters out there. You have Doug Fister who could help in a rotation, possibly Ryan Howard, although he's really past his prime in Philadelphia. You have people like Pedro Alvarez. I think he could be a really good DH for a team in the American League. Angel Pagan, who's really good at getting on the base and a switch hitter, formerly of the Giants. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys that could really contribute to some teams still.
Yeah, Matt Wieters was a guy I'm surprised that still is not signed right now, because I do know he generated some interest in January. So he's someone that I think he can contribute right away. Even he looked like he bounced back really well from the ACL injury from 2 years ago, and I do expect him to be even, since he's a little more healthy now, I do expect him to be even better because he was a pretty good offensive catcher when healthy. So it's interesting to see where these guys will land, and we're literally like 6 weeks away now, and we still got the baseball classic to talk about too. So we're gonna get into a lot of baseball talk in the next 2 months until the opening day starts. So I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
It's beginning. It's beginning. With the NFL being done, I'm really excited for baseball to be coming back. But that concludes our show, Ben.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
It does, yeah. We'll be back next week to discuss another division. We don't know which division we're going to preview yet, but we will be continuing these division previews until the beginning of the season. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concept Baseball Podcast. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
My name is Ben.
And you guys have a good day, and you guys come back next week for some more baseball talk.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.